Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are across Canada. This seems to be a coast-to-coast webinar, so thank you so much, everyone, for carving some time out of your day. My name is Ron Canada. Met many of you who are on the call today. Former VP Marketing of for First West Credit Union, and we've just recently launched Sprout and Harvest back here in the summer, and I'm really excited about bringing a topic forward to the credit union system that I think is going to be new for most people. As I mentioned, was that First West Credit Union and being able to run a fairly large budget when it comes to digital media. I actually didn't know we had this problem. And you may have seen in some of our social media and all these sorts of things that, Houston, we do have a bit of a problem here where despite running a large budget, I didn't realize that we had such a carbon impact when it comes to digital media. And so as I was reassembling Sprout and Harvest, I met Avril, who I'll introduce in a second, and discovered that there actually is a solution here. There's a way that we can address the carbon impact of our digital media campaigns. Avril's going to give us a whole bunch of detail, but I'm really excited about talking with everyone here today. We're going to talk for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. You should see a little Q&A button on your screen. And if you do want to ask questions along the way, we'll certainly answer them along the way, or we can leave them at the end. We'll try and leave about 10 minutes for questions. And yeah, before I hand it over to Avril, we'll just quickly introduce Sprout and Harvest. Most of you I know on the call here today, but for those of you who don't know, we're a full service marketing agency for financial brands, and we span everything from strategy, brand and creative, design, website design and build. Many of you know us for some of that work, and we've built many of your websites, campaigns and media, and that's what we're going to be talking about today with Avril. And we also offer content and social media services. My partners and colleagues are there on the screen, and we're an ever-expanding team, and really looking forward to chatting with you down the road today and down the road. I'm going to now introduce Avril. Avril has over 15 years of digital media experience, and I'm really excited about introducing her to the financial brands across Canada, because Avril truly is a pioneer with her partners in this. This is an emerging topic. This is new, and Avril's doing lots of work to carve the way for all of us. And very excited to have you here today with us, Avril, and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thanks, Ron. Can you hear me okay? Not on mute?
All good.
Nothing funny going on? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. Like Ron said, we're really excited to dive into this topic. It is an emerging topic. It's an exciting topic. It is, as I say, we're building the plane in the air as we fly it kind of topic. And we got a lot to get through in 45 minutes-ish. Drop any questions in the chat. We will do our best to track and answer those as we go, and after we'll have a bit of time for Q&A. So just a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to understand firstly the environmental impact of digital advertising at a very base level. We're going to identify wasted ad spend and its environmental consequences, as well as financial. We're going to dig into some strategies. So we have sort of a 5-step action plan for reducing carbon emissions in media buying that can be implemented by an internal team, by an agency. And then I'm going to dive into some case studies just to show how we're applying all of this in real time for clients that we work with. So the internet is a growing driver of global carbon emissions. So this is something that wasn't even on my radar, to be completely honest, until a few years ago. When you think about it, I mean, we all tend to think the internet as being cloud-based, right? Everything is in the cloud. It's in the cloud, but the cloud is actually a real thing. The cloud equals servers and server farms, and server farms are incredibly energy intensive, right? The water, the land use, the energy required to cool and run these massive factories, essentially, for energy. And 3.8% of global greenhouse gases are generated by the internet itself. This is on par, this 3.8%. You'll see the figure associated with the airline industry most closely. So we tend to think of fossil fuels and cars and airline, but the internet is a huge driver here. This is predicted to double. That's conservative, right? By 2025. From some of the work we're seeing, some of the reading I'm doing, some of the things that are being uncovered as we go, that's a very conservative estimate, the doubling. 2025 is in, what, 3 months? I think this is going to be, it's going to far shoot that estimate. This is largely in part to the emergence and adoption of AI and training large language learning models by big tech companies. Super energy hungry system, right? And so the internet, the energy consumption is growing at a remarkable pace. The internet runs on ads. It is the ecosystem that drives the internet. The scale of digital spending is big. It keeps getting bigger. So global expenditures are set to reach nearly 670 billion this year alone in 2023. Specifically, when we're talking about the financial services sector, it's a huge spender. So third, only behind retail and CPG, which are the top two. I think it's retail, then it's CPG, then it's financial services. So that $33.2 billion figure is the 2024 spend by the financial services sector on advertising. Most of us on this webinar today, on this call, I think there's a fair deal of marketing experience, right? So there's an understanding that marketing is a great thing for us, right? It's a business generator. It drives ROI. It increases brand awareness, sales growth, education, consumer engagement. That's the best kind of impact that advertising has, marketing activities. But there's also kind of the worst possible impact that we could have. So there's a huge waste associated with these marketing dollars. That's 670 billion annually, and the 33.2 for the financial services sector. Inefficient targeting, poor results, unqualified impressions, financial waste. So we call this a double-edged impact of digital advertising. And this problem of waste is, it's always been there. In particular, as digital has exploded and technologies like programmatic have come into the fray over the last 10, 12, 15 years, really, I would say. Recent studies have found that up to 40% of display advertising, so when I say display advertising, I'm talking very specifically about open web programmatic display advertising, is wasted. 8.5% of other paid traffic across all major platforms is also deemed invalid. This study included Google, Bing, Meta, LinkedIn, X, and TikTok. This was a recent study, came out through Lunio this year. So really significant finding, and maybe just worth taking a moment to define what I mean by invalid and wasted. That's important. So impressions that are essentially missing their mark. You're paying for them as an advertiser. They're not hitting the right target. They're being served below the fold on a page. No one sees them, but you're paying for them. They're in like an auto refresh situation. So you're reading an article and there's one, the 250 by 300, that little square ad on the right-hand side, and it's constantly refreshing with different advertisers' advertisements, not having any impact. Made for advertising sites, basically content farms that are created for what we call ad arbitrage in the industry. So just a place for providers to dump money to serve impressions that are invaluable. No one sees, no one's clicking on them, nothing's happening there. So broadly speaking, that's what we mean by waste. Missed target, wasted money, you're buying impressions, they're not doing their job, because ideally you want every impression to have an impact. You want it to be seen by the eyeballs, you want to see it and get them to do the thing that you want them to do as an advertiser. Click through, sign up, purchase something. So for financial brands in particular, this translates to billions in wasted spend. And this highlights the need for more effective and efficient digital advertising strategies, just from a financial perspective alone. So quick math, that's, if we're looking at just that 8.5% of that cross-channel platform waste, that's 3.3 billion wasted down the drain. And first I speak to the financial, because we're in business, and we're in the business of business, and that's primarily important, that our money is working for us and we're reaching our goals from a financial perspective. But this is not just financial waste. So what many marketers and people in general are failing to realize is this energy consumption associated with digital advertising is directly contributing to the global carbon emissions of the internet. These dollar spend figures are derived from impressions delivered in the trillions daily. So delivering these impressions essentially comes from transferring data from one place to another, often with many intermediary stops. So think of data transfer as everything that makes a campaign go. Ad serving, creative delivery, media distribution. Essentially, advertising equals emissions. And we can't get away from this. If we're advertising, we are generating emissions. The average digital marketing campaign, this is a recent stat, we found that it generated 5.4 metric tons of emissions. And for reference, the average annual emissions of one person per year is 4 metric tons. So this is enormous. For those who have sort of an understanding of what campaigns look like digitally and the language around that. So an average campaign, we did a bit of quick math, we would say $72,000, 12 million impressions, a $6 CPM. Some of you will run one of these a year, right? $72,000 ad spend. Some will run 10. We work with some clients who run, over 100 of this spend level. So this is an enormous impact.
I think, Avril, if I could just jump in there just quickly, this is just sort of what I was trying to get to in the introduction, was that this is the moment that sort of my jaw dropped, where, as a financial brand digital marketer, always focused on optimizing the performance of the campaigns, but not realizing that as part of that, we also have an opportunity to address carbon emissions. Didn't even know it was an issue. So this for me was sort of hey, this is why I need to be working with Avril and bringing Avril to the credit union and financial brand industries, and why Avril is now part of the Sprout and Harvest team. So yeah, this is really exciting stuff. Thanks, Avril.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are having that response. I had it when I first sort of started digging in myself a few years ago. It's just not talked about. It's overlooked. There's little education around it. And I think it's really important to just start the conversations within all the industries, right? So we can understand our areas of impact better. And then, we'll get into steps that we can take to reduce and have positive impact on those areas in a little bit. But just a quick note here to mention that all of these activities as a business fall under your scope 3 emissions. So if you are a part of a purpose-driven financial brand, you're likely engaged, you individually or team members are involved in some level of ESG reporting and disclosure. Lots of companies, and a growing amount of companies are. I think we know the landscape is changing a bit in terms of sustainability initiatives, self-regulation is great, but there's also a growing trend of external regulation coming in this regard. So companies are beholden of certain sizes, right, to reporting on their scope 1, 2, and increasingly scope 3 emissions. So this is really important, and I believe it will come so as the years tick on, and corporate social responsibility becomes just a absolute necessity of doing business, not a nice to have, but you have to do this, right? And if you want to stay in business, in terms of adhering to regulations. And so scope 3 emissions, just quickly, if y'all are not familiar with the definition, they are emissions generated as a result of indirect emissions generated as a result of activities of doing business. So your scope 1 emissions would be your offices, your fleet of trucks, factories, kinds of things. Scope 3 emissions are, the people you hire, their emissions, right? What they do to generate the product that you purchase. Business travel falls under scope 3 emissions, and advertising falls under scope 3 emissions. So where do they come from? right?
And sorry, I will just to jump in there. I was just say just to sort of underscore that I think it's an opportunity to add into some of your ESG reporting. So
Absolutely, yeah. So where do they come from? This is a very sort of simplistic visual representation of what I like to think of as the life cycle analysis of an advertisement. So we look at three buckets. So we look at the creation of the ads themselves. So agency overhead, creative production, travel and management involved in producing the ad content, the video, the images, what have you. Targeting and serving, this is the area that I and myself and my team are most invested in and trying to solve problems around, because it's a really significant part of this. But the energy usage and carbon emissions directly result from, you know, what it takes to get that ad to the person. So the platforms, the consumer data aggregation tools, servers, cloud computing. And then the third is the media consumption itself. So the energy used by the user when they're, you know, user device management, data transmission, all that kind of stuff. And so a single display campaign generating 1 million impressions. Here's another one. I like these comparables because I think it helps really conceptualize what feels quite out there. 1 million impressions in this middle targeting and serving area can have the carbon footprint equivalent to driving a car for a year, right? This is a little bit more of a visual map of what that looks like. So the majority of the carbon generated from programmatic advertising, this is specifically a visual representation of the programmatic display advertising supply chain. I'm going to talk a little bit about the distinction between this and walled garden like Meta, Google, TikTok a little bit later on. This shows how the majority of emissions can be attributed to the notoriously complex supply chain. So there are a multitude of intermediaries, arguably a lot of them unnecessary, involved in what it takes for one ad to reach one set of eyeballs. It's incredibly complex. And so you see here on the left, you know, advertiser, you know, has already created the asset, right, in video or image form, agency, all the way down to publisher site. Every step of the way in this chain, it involves cloud data server computing power. And we look at these little CO2 clouds, and internally we use the language of little poofs of energy to sort of help us like conceptualize what this means. But basically an ad impression from the creation of the ad till when, you know, the individual sees it on their device involves you know, a whole bunch of hops through this chain, and servers calling in real time, trillions of bids through multiple intermediaries. And what this means in, you know, the simplest terms is just a whole whack of energy. I have another little example to show the complexity of this chain. I wanted to hop into. This is from our tech partner, Scope 3, that we work with. They are leading the charge in emissions modeling measurement. We'll get into them shortly, but just sort of to show what we're talking about when it comes to one impression to one set of eyeballs. This is an example from, say, Business Insider. You're running a programmatic campaign. You're buying an audience, essentially. You're targeting audience member or audience targets wherever they may be, right? And say they're on Business Insider and you're buying an impression on Business Insider through an automated ad auction. It looks like this, right? And then we see the, you know, the impression traveling complexity. You know, we could keep doing this. It expands and expands. I couldn't include the screenshot in the presentation because it just gets too messy. Unified auction is our biggest one. I'm not going to get into too much detail about what this all is, but this just, I think, and I don't know, Ron, you can, if you have anything to add in here, because I know we've talked about this before, but how it illustrates the complexity of where an impression is served through and what an ad auction actually looks like, and how you can look at this and in the simplest terms think of every single player here as having technology that enables ad delivery and serving, that's data transfer. So there's a lot going on, right?
Yeah, nothing really to add, Avril, other than like, this is just one property. If you start to expand that across an entire campaign, just imagine the amount of energy transference throughout that. It just gets mind-boggling.
Yeah. So there's the problem defined, and what can we do about it? So that's sort of what we're in the business of figuring out as an agency right now, and I would say that we are we are not doing it alone. We're I think we're out front in some ways, but we're really relying on a whole bunch of innovators in the space and linking arms and trying to do this together and do our part. And so our part as the agency that we are is we come up with this sort of, let's call it a 5-step action plan that I think could be helpful to anybody listening and watching today to start thinking about switching or applying a lens, right, to your marketing activities that you're already no doubt doing in some capacity, whether it's that one campaign $72,000 number or it's at 10 times that. Like, it's just a way to start templating some of the things that you're doing. So I'm going to go through each one of these in the following slides. I'm going to talk about audit and discovery, sustainable foundation setting, channel specific optimizations, the importance of granularity and precision audience targeting, and then finally, reporting and transparency. So the central tenet and first thing you do with any digital ad campaign is audit and discovery. So we apply that here just with the element of carbon as well. So we're lucky enough to have licensed access to the Scope 3. So like I said, they're a leader in this space of attempting to measure the emissions impact of every single ad impression and all the platforms. It's a monumental amount of work, but what that looks like is it allows for insight through this platform of what the carbon intensity and impact is by channel. And so we can't reduce what we can't measure in just the most simple, to put it the most simply. So we need to figure out first what we're dealing with. So from an audit and discovery standpoint, the recommendation is just, media mixes will vary, but to look, are you running Facebook on Meta? That's Meta, so Instagram, Facebook. Are you on Snapchat? Are you buying any programmatic display retargeting? Are you just running Google PPC? Some caveats there. This is not a fully formed tool and that it can measure absolutely everything across the internet, because like I said, building the plane as it's being flown, but there are pieces that are coming together that are enabling us to see things incrementally, right, as we go. And so we are able to, in this example instance, we can hold up Snapchat and Facebook and we can measure the emissions for a single digital ad impression on these properties. And we could potentially say, well, Snapchat is in the 10th percentile of emitters and Facebook is in the 90th percentile of emitters. One of the many bones my team has to pick with Facebook. And we can start to make decisions based on this information, right? Not, of course, in a silo, because we need to be looking at our performance data as well, our other KPIs that are like centrally important, our ROI KPIs, our performance KPIs for engagement, things like that. But we want to start with a type of audit to just get the shape of what your current business activity is generating. And there are multiple tools we can start to kind of do this. Scope 3 is one of them. There are some other sort of carbon calculators I will include in a resources note later on, or have Ron send as a follow-up to get just sort of like a general idea of what your impression levels are generating.
What I find interesting about this, and for those involved in responsible investing on the call today, it's kind of analogous to responsible investing in that it's both about the responsible side, the carbon impact side, and performance. We're not sacrificing performance. It's about both together. So when we look at like the slide before where, Facebook, 90th percentile, doesn't mean we're totally eliminating Facebook. It just, we're merging the two aspects of performance and carbon impact. So we're not going to sacrifice performance. And it's very similar to some of the, many of you out there dealing with your clients and members in branch line go, well, why would I do responsible investing? Because we're eliminating part of the market. It's the same sort of analogy where we're doing both. No, it's performance and impact. So very, very similar there.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Ron. I'll dig into that a bit more deeply in our case studies too, so you can see that this is the drum that I've been banging for a little while here. It's like there's no compromise. It's actually beneficial from a fiscal perspective too. But yeah, so when we're approaching this through this new kind of set of glasses, it's audit and discovery, and then we move on to foundation setting with building strategic plans where we include carbon as a KPI. So once we have these insights, the next step in a more sustainable strategy for ad buying is to make carbon intensity a foundational variable in determining your media mix. So this interplays with the first one, as you can see, quite naturally, right? So we want to clearly define our KPIs as we would regardless. So we want to, what is our goal acquisition rate? What is our, ideal CTR? What are we benchmarking against? Like all these things that will be familiar to anyone in the marketing world. We just want to add carbon to that. And that can look, I was thinking about this last night, and when this is new to you, new to an organization, that can look as simple as you're going to try to measure it. It doesn't have to be, immediate, like jumping to figure out how to reduce, and because the data is the most important first step. And so adding a carbon KPI can be, we're going to, engage someone on our team, or we're going to engage a partner, or we're going to find a technology or a tool to try to at least understand what this campaign that we're going to run next month, next year, what the impact of that is, right? And just adding that in when you're looking at your, ultimate reporting at the end of the day, and then building from that. So, walk before you run, like just what is it? The best is the enemy of the good. Like, it's just like, get going, right? Like, try to understand it. And so I think this is really important from a foundation setting perspective when we're looking at our KPIs and holistically. So aligning goals, and Ron has mentioned this, overall with sustainability and ESG business objectives. So if you are an organization that has a set of executionable and meaningful ESG related business objectives, like this fits right into that. It's all important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about channel specific optimizations as the third point. And earlier in the visual examples, those were particular to the programmatic digital display supply chain, which is a bit of a different thing than the walled gardens. So the way that I categorize these two, and as an industry we categorize these two, is there's open web programmatic, which is that example you saw. If you bought on a programmatic option and the ad was served on, served Business Insider, and then out from there. And then walled gardens. So these are big tech, ad tech companies like Meta, Amazon, Google, TikTok, Reddit, all of those. So they're walled gardens, and they are what they sound like. They're walled. You don't come in and out. You buy in the platform, and you buy with their suite of tools. And there are less intermediaries or no intermediaries burning server calls as with open web programmatic. But they rely on a lot of automation and default settings that can increase your carbon intensity if not optimized accordingly. So there are different ways, and we are learning this, right? I mean, we just ran a test campaign on Meta with a client, wherein we were trying to decrease the carbon of a current campaign with that of a what's the word, control campaign. And we're finding how much room we actually have to move within these walled gardens. It's not as much as we do with open web programmatic, where we could potentially go in and say, we don't want to run on MFAs, those ad arbitrage sites. We can just delete them, right? With a Meta or an Amazon or a Google, it gets a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more about the targeting. But from this perspective, when we're looking at it at a media mix level, which is my sort of unlovely visual here, but it gets the point across. We can see this is a potential media mix. So we've got RT display, that's retargeting display, that would be open web programmatic. OTT CTV, that would be open web programmatic. And then TikTok, Meta, and Google PPC, paid search. So then these would be, walled gardens. So we want to start breaking it down by channel and looking at where the carbon is coming from, where that impact is being felt or had, and then what can we do within these channels to actually move the needle, and or how can we shift budgets within these channels. So this is something that is a tool like a scope 3 that we work with is really useful for too. So we can look at, we're spending X% of the budget on Meta, and we're getting X result, but the spend that we are, like on TikTok, we're getting the same result, but we're spending less of the budget. And then we look at the carbon and we go, okay, well, we could shift some budget from Meta to TikTok, all other things being equal. So making calculated carbon accounting considerations, essentially. Yeah, so this dives a little bit deeper into very specifically the walled garden arena. So getting granular is, this is just the most important thing when you're in this business anyways, in my opinion. If you are a media buyer, strategist, planner, the high level of precision audience targeting is sort of a baseline importance. I would argue that not everyone, does that, but it is absolutely, the lens through which we approach our planning and buying is ensuring that we are reaching the exact right audience with the right message at the right time, in the right environment, all that stuff. But a lot of unnecessary carbon waste. So when we start to, again, apply the carbon lens, not just the efficiency financial lens, a lot of unnecessary waste is the result of ineffective targeting. So if you are delivering superfluous impressions, you're running a paid search campaign and you're delivering a whole whack of impressions that aren't getting clicks, that's wasted money, A, and B, that's carbon that does not need to be poofing up into the atmosphere. So we have some internal strategies and tools that we apply to refine and narrow our targeting segments, some really robust keyword strategy tools for PPC specifically, and of course for Meta and Amazon and the like. But we really just want to ensure that we're reaching the most qualified slice of the population with the messaging, and this minimizes wasted impressions, leads to more efficient ad spend, reduces energy consumption associated with the serving of unnecessary ads, and increases the efficiency of campaigns. So, the way that I talk about this is just like win, 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 win. Like why, this is so important that we are doing this for so many reasons. A measurement that we're kind of playing around with, but we're attempting to apply as a KPI to all our campaigns within walled gardens, where we have this level of control, is carbon intensity per result, as opposed to per 1,000 impressions, which is sort of the standard way that the industry is looking at this. But what we're trying to do, and then to prove, and then to keep growing upon, is this idea that the better your campaign is in terms of the better your results are, held up against the carbon emissions that were released as a result of the delivery of that campaign, we come up with a number that is the carbon intensity per result. So when I say result, I mean, per click, per video view, per email capture, whatever it is. And then we create a benchmark internally to work towards decreasing, or we look to, a previous campaign that we're, trying to improve upon. So all of this would be sort of moot without the final point in our sort of decarbonization lens for media planning, which is reporting and transparency, sharing the data. So, we can't control what we can't measure, and we can't improve upon what we're not what we're not sharing. I think that this is a collective thing that we need to be doing and we need to be thinking about. So as well as that enthusiastic test and learn mentality, to appreciate that this is not a perfect science. Well, there's a lot of perfect science within it, but as a whole, it's still moving, right? It's still growing, it's still evolving. We need to, in our experience, like there's a lot of testing and learning, and there are a lot of things that happen where we go into a campaign with one metric, assuming that we're using that, and then halfway through, someone has developed a methodology to figure out that metric is no longer, applicable, and it's another one, and so we got to roll with it, right? So that's important. So really strong, tight partnerships are important in this regard, where both parties are keen to test and learn and share and get better. And then, the sharing of the data. So this helps with a few things. So if you are releasing an annual impact report or an ESG report, this is a story within there, right? It's line item. It applies to scope 3 emissions reductions, things you're doing. If you're a B Corp, that's really important for recertification. It's great for consumer understanding, sentiment, all kinds of things, and it encourages other organizations in the marketplace. I think this is one of, like, if not the most important, encourages other organizations in the marketplace to question and engage in their own sustainable advertising journeys. If a tree falls in the woods, right? Like we want this to be integrated as part of the broader conversation across all industries, but in particular industries that have a purpose-driven kind of objective or ethos. It's just really important. I think it's a natural place for it to grow and to flourish. And then, of course, there are tools that can help us with this reporting and transparency, where we can actually, in very simple mathematical terms, equate our impressions to our carbon. And I think that ties sort of back into the number one in this list, where if that's where you're going to start, that's a great place to start. That's it. How many impressions did I deliver? What was my, metric ton of carbon for this campaign? So all of this to say, and Ron, you said it great a minute ago, but more sustainable advertising is more effective advertising. 9 times out of 10. It is not a compromise. So it is not like, oh, this is a shiny, cool thing and it'll look great for PR and ESG and blah, blah. Like, no, it is more effective advertising. So here are a few case studies. I'm going to take you through 3.
Just to jump in, and that's truly the exciting part of it. It's this merger of performance and sustainability altogether. That's truly the opportunity here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Win-win. So we have 3 case studies. I tried to include, one for open web programmatic, then one for paid search, and one for paid social, just to kind of give the gamut of what we're up to and how we can apply this lens that I just walked through, those 5 steps, in different scenarios of that media mix. And so, again, like I said, programmatic can kind of be the most sort of direct, simplistic, well, not simplistic, but most direct way. It's the most fully baked solution out there, because the open web is the easiest for companies like Scope 3 and Good Loop and others in the space to access and thus measure, right? Because it is the open web as opposed to a walled garden. So in this instance, dynamically excluded 30% of the highest emitting domains. So those would be those MFAs and others, not just MFAs, but you can see with some of these tools lists of of websites that are considered climate risk inventory. So that just means that they have like the most complex backend potentially systems for header bidding, and they have the most impression inventory available. So anyway, so we omit 30% of these. We see a resulting 43% decrease in emissions directly associated with this just blocking of the domains, 65% increase in CTR against historical performance data. And so this exclusion list also included domains where the CTR performed lower than the client's KPI. So again, this is just really to put a fine point on that idea that it is not a compromise, and it is every decision made when we're looking at this approach is holding the KPI of carbon equal with the KPI of performance. This is a paid search case study. I have a visual for this one right below it that really exemplifies how we can use, some custom built targeting tools. So in this case, internally we use a proprietary, like a full funnel based keyword targeting schema. I'm not going to get into it. If anyone wants to chat about it after, let me know. I'll connect you to my keyword genius on the back end. But we use this to narrow our total possible audience to a true representation of the highest qualified targets. So basically everything we are doing when we are looking at a build of a paid search campaign is to minimize impressions, wasted impressions. We want them like the cream of the crop when it comes to impressions in general, but in particular with PPC, where we want your click to impression ratio to really look a certain way in order to spell success. What we saw here was a 44% decrease in our cost per click, which was significant through the employment of this highly efficient keyword targeting strategy, and a 48% decrease in the CO2. Because if we're delivering less impressions, we're delivering less carbon. That's not rocket science, right? But it's just being able to include that as a way that we're looking at things and what we're motivated by. And at the end of the day, the cost of the campaign was actually no less, but the cost per result was far more efficient. And so if we're not really caring as much about superfluous or filler impressions, like we could just potentially get results of a sort of similar nature or, chug along fine with it. But once we start applying the carbon, it becomes just a layer of that much more significance. And so this relatively unlovely chart does show what this looks like. So top chart is cost. Fairly self-explanatory. Cost, we can see the period of time where we implemented the changes that we'd been working on around October, November of 2023. But primarily what I want to focus on, or I want eyeballs to focus on, is that lower chart where the top purple line, or the purple line rather, is impressions and the pink line is clicks. And so we see this total lowering and leveling out of impressions and this really healthy increase and maintenance of click volume that makes everybody really happy when you do what we do. So what this signifies is super qualified clicks, right? Super high levels of qualified clicks and low levels of impressions, which means that every impression we're delivering is pretty qualified to get that click. If you're familiar at all with how paid search works, this is what you want to see. But what it also shows is that, see those impressions prior to October, November 2023 are spiking quite a bit, and we can, deduce that they're not the most qualified impressions, thus they're wasteful in the carbon sense. I really hope this is clear. If anyone has any clarifying questions in our Q&A or after, always love to talk about it. So please don't hesitate.
For me, I wrote this one just really illustrates that ratio that you're talking about there, the campaign carbon intensity, where we're driving results for a given spend essentially.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this case study, this was interesting. So this is an example of another walled garden. So this is Meta, and I would say we went into this with some data from the year prior, assuming that we could have a little bit more of an impact on reducing the overall carbon of the campaign. We found some things. We found that Meta is in the last couple of years, their emissions as a business have 10x'd year over year, at minimum 10, 20, 30, I don't know. It's exponentially growing. And this is all because of AI development and the billions of dollars investing in building large language models, all the automation and the AI integration on the Ads Manager platform that Meta is pushing all users to move towards. So the way that our partner Scope 3 measures the emissions on Meta is taking all of their emissions data that they are required as a company of a certain size to release on an annual basis, and then modeling, the impressions from there. So when their business emissions skyrocket, the emissions associated with our ad campaigns skyrocket, because what they do directly impacts what we're doing. And so, I mean, in one world, it would be, the answer would be just don't advertise on Meta, but I don't live in that world. And I don't think any of you do either, unfortunately, because it's Meta, and because they continue to have some of the most robust targeting and data set tools available to us as digital advertisers. But what we can do is, and it's been touched on now a couple times, is we can really work towards that decreased carbon intensity per result. So with this campaign, we held up a campaign that ran last summer for the same period of time as one that ran this summer, and same budget, same objective, and we applied all the tools in our toolkit to essentially increase the efficiency. We were gunning to decrease the carbon. We did decrease the carbon overall by about 10%, not a huge amount, but it was a decrease. We'll always be trying for that. But again, as Meta continues to do what Meta continues to do, we will have, limited control. But what we can do is everything within our jurisdiction when it comes to manual inventory auditing. So that means not just letting Meta run itself, which it wants to. It's what it wants advertisers to do. It wants to take your money and it wants you to set it and forget it. But in that, there are some issues, in particular when we're starting to look at it from a carbon perspective. One quick example, it would be, we're delivering, okay, so first of all, there's audience extension. We want to turn that off. That's where Meta targets ad impressions outside of Facebook and Instagram as filler, essentially, to reach impression levels and to just, spray and pray, as they say. But manual inventory auditing, you turn that off, right? No audience extension. There's some affinity to some AI enabled targeting elements that give you less and less control as marketers. Some are great, right? I'm not saying they're I'm not smarter than Meta's developers. Some are great, some are not, and some are not great for specifically for carbon. So this one we found after about a week of delivery, and we went in and we poked around. This huge amount of impressions being delivered on Instagram was really low quality, these little 90 by 90 thumbnail ads in Instagram reels, and no one was clicking on them, no one's seeing them, so we turned them off. That immediately increased our performance, and thus increased our performance, lowered our impression levels, improved our carbon intensity per result. I kind of made up that acronym CIPR because I work in digital marketing and we love acronyms. So you don't know if you'll see it anywhere else, but we're workshopping it, right? So
You need a little TM, you need a little TM beside that.
A little TM, yeah, I should. Just any letters together. So what we saw was a real significant impact to our minds. Like we spent the same money, we delivered roughly the same amount of carbon as the previous campaign, but we achieved, a 62% reduction in that intensity metric per the result. And the result in this case was clicks. We wanted people visiting the site. And so by eliminating these underqualified impressions, we increased our primary KPI, we reduced our carbon intensity, and we view this as a really great success and a big learning, right? And it will continue to evolve as we go. So in conclusion, essentially, I'll say it again, more sustainable advertising, more effective advertising. When we improve for lower carbon, we improve for campaign performance, or when we improve for campaign performance, we optimize for lower carbon. Interchangeable, right? Not a trade-off. And so this is just a recap of what I took you through in the last 50 minutes or so. So our audit and discovery, we want to understand emissions intensity by channel, solidify our strategic goals, even if they are just, what are they, right? Sustainable foundation setting, strategically building plans with carbon as a KPI, an important one. Channel specific optimization. So that's looking at our pie chart, our media mix, understanding what we can do where or what we can do between channels. And then the importance of precision audience targeting and getting granular. And then finally, reporting and transparency. So gathering and sharing data and learnings, because we will go farther, faster together in all of this. So thanks so much. I'm going to hand it back over to Ron.
Thank you, Avril. That was fantastic. And I hope everyone enjoyed that and learned some things. I've been learning a ton here over the last 3 months, and just see such a great opportunity for us in the financial brand space, embracing this. And Avril, she's very humble, but she is a pioneer working with other partners within the industry. And I thank you for leading the charge for us. And I'm excited that you've joined me with Sprout and Harvest, and essentially, so everyone's clear, Avril's agency is essentially the digital media arm of Sprout and Harvest, and we'll work together with financial brands across Canada and the US. One little quick, if you wanted to get started, absolutely, you can just reach out for us for questions and those sort of things. There is a sort of a low touch approach to even just sort of dipping your toe into this world, and that would be kind of at that number 1 step in the 5-step approach that Avril was suggesting. And what we could do as a light touch, if you're interested, is essentially do a quick carbon emissions audit and discovery, in particular for Meta. And essentially what we need for that is we need a sample of data from Meta. And essentially what you'll get out of that is an assessment of your CO2 emissions with regards to Meta, and then some emission reduction recommendations and some other strategic considerations as well. So it would be sort of low touch, fairly low budget, and those sort of things. So if you're interested in dipping your toe, let us know. But we just wanted to sort of put something in front of everyone. Well, this is a big topic. Like, where do we start? This is where we would recommend that you start. So, you want to add in that to Avril?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's that kind of start somewhere idea, and it would be fairly custom in terms of the representative sample, because it can mean so many things. So just a little bit more of like getting to know what the challenge is and what the current objectives and seeing is behind under the hood, right? So we like to take a little look under the hood, we say, and see where we go from there.
We've got about 5 minutes left. We've got one question in the Q&A. Feel free to add any other questions, and we can spend a few minutes here answering them. This question's from Miranda from Sunshine Coast Credit Union. Thank you, Miranda. Not sure if we're going to have an immediate answer for this one, but essentially, I'm going to paraphrase what Miranda's asked, and that's curious about the impact of traditional media versus digital media from a carbon perspective, and if we have any stats or commentary about that.
That is such a great question. I know that Scope 3, and I was talking to someone yesterday at Ad Net Zero. They do a lot of work in this space. They could have some metrics here. I don't necessarily. Radio is low. I can tell you that radio is low. They measure radio. We measure digital audio. It would be somewhere. So I can find a resource and I can send it your way if we can be connected. Absolutely. I know we have broadcast in the suite of things we look at. So we look at some old timey stuff still, and it we have some numbers there. But I'll send that along. And I just see someone has asked, what about the addition of AI? Ooh, yeah, I'm not sure if you, I did speak on that briefly, but AI is kind of a problem.
The question is, what about the addition of AI in marketing / communication? How much emissions does AI produce? What will be tracked? And I think that's sort of one of the things that Albert was talking about at the start. It's like, we have a problem now. It's even going to get worse with AI, with all the energy required for that. Sorry, over to you.
Yeah, of course. No, it's getting worse. I actually just this week, I believe it was the ANAs that and Scope 3. I can't remember exactly who released it, but Scope 3 is beginning the measurement process for AI. So it's a huge undertaking. There's pushback. People like Meta, they don't want to open their doors to show you what's what. Of course, they don't. But the impact is massive, and it's concerning. So just a quick example that might be helpful is one, a Google search versus a chat GPT query. A chat GPT query, tell me where to go for dinner on chat GPT versus Google is 25 times more energy intensive than it is on Google. That's just one tiny example. And AI is exploded. So yeah, will that be tracked? That people are trying. That's going to be really tough, but we can see on the broad numbers, the high level numbers, that it is problematic.
Yeah, the moral of the story is, it's just, this problem is just going to get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other questions for anyone? Throw them in there. Maybe we can just go to our resources page, Avril, if you can just bump ahead a couple. Avril has included a few links to a few resources if you want to get a bit more up to speed on this. So this will be included for you. So feel free to peruse that. And yeah, I think we're 1 minute from wrapping up. So congratulations, Avril. You landed the plane exactly on time. So thanks very much, everyone. If you can just go to the next slide, Avril. And if anyone has any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is in here, and we'd love to answer any questions and explore anything that you'd like to talk about. So thank you so much for your time today. I know everyone's really busy, and it was a pleasure having a chat. And thank you, Avril. You did a phenomenal job, and look forward to work with you and others in the financial industry in the months and years to come. So thanks very much, everybody. Have a really
Thank you, everybody.
day.
Thanks, Ron.
Avril.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Hope to talk to some of you soon. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.